Yo, what is going on, guys? It is boy Nick here, back again with a brand new video today. So this is now the 9th episode of my new series, which I review every single MCU Disney Plus TV show and special up to the release of Secret Invasion. Today we're going to be reviewing She-Hulk Attorney at Law. So this is a very interesting kind of show to review because actually prior to this review, I actually hadn't seen the show before. And this was one that I know had a lot of haters and a lot of controversy surrounding the show, which I decided not to listen to any of that going into the show because I like to view shows and movies with my own eyes. I don't like having outside opinions try and affect something, so I'm watching this completely detached from social media, completely detached from the hype, all that stuff. So I went to the show with optimism. I went to the show just hoping that I would like it, and for the most part I did really like this show. I think it's a fun show. It's a lot of fun to watch. I do have issues with it though, but I think overall She-Hulk Attorney at Law is a fun show, and I think that it doesn't deserve all the hate that it gets. It does deserve some criticisms, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. But yeah, without further ado, let's talk about She-Hulk. So starting off with the really good stuff, the show does have a really fun cast. Tatiana Maslany, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, was very charming as Jen Walter, or She-Hulk. I think she was, in my opinion, the big glue that held the show together. The thing that really worked for me about the show was having a really charming lead character, kind of like how I felt about Miss Marvel. I thought she did a great job in the show. She was really fun. I liked a lot of her line delivery. I thought she had a lot of great comedic timing with her character. I really enjoyed the character. I think I might have actually enjoyed the character more than I enjoyed the actual show. But yeah, I thought Tatiana Maslany really made the show for me. And I like the way in which Jen's character evolves, because she is kind of an interesting character because she's dealing with the struggle of being a Hulk in a superhero-centric world. So what's interesting about the original Hulk character is that he was a Hulk when the rest of the world still wasn't used to superheroes, and now we have a new Hulk character where the rest of the world is already used to superheroes. So it's kind of interesting to see that kind of dynamic with this character, and I actually kind of like the way she evolves throughout the show and the way that she decides to accept herself for who she is, so I appreciate the way they go about that. Also, Ginger Gonzaga, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, was pretty funny as Nikki Ramos. Now, she wasn't my favorite aspect of the show, but I enjoyed her when she was there. I thought she was the closest thing that we had to a great supporting character. I thought she was fun when she was there. It was also really cool to see Mark Ruffalo again. I love seeing Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk. His time in the show, I wish we could have seen him more, but it was cool to see him again. It's cool to see what he's doing after Endgame. I kind of wish they showed us more of him because I want to know what he's up to after Endgame, but it was cool to see him again. It was also cool to see Benedict Wong as Wong again. Wong's kind of like the Nick Fury of Phase 4. He's in every project, it feels like. He's in Shang-Chi and No Way Home and She-Hulk and Multiverse of Madness. Wong's everywhere, but it's cool to see Wong again. And it was great to see Tim Roth as the Abomination again. The Abomination is a decent villain in my opinion. I've never been the biggest fan of him, but I've always liked Tim Roth's performance in the Incredible Hulk movie. And they finally addressed how we got to see him in Shang-Chi, which I really appreciate. I was like, how did he get there? They finally acknowledge that, they finally address it, and they actually kind of give some nuance to his character that I really like. I thought Tim Roth was actually one of the better aspects of the show. The show also does have a lot of really fun, witty dialogue. I like a lot of the banter between the characters. I like how the show feels very sitcom-like, and it feels more like a TV show than it does like a movie split up into chapters, so I appreciate that. It's also just a very easygoing, fun show. This is one where I can kind of just turn my brain off and have fun when I'm watching it, so I like the fact that this show feels a lot more TV show-like than it does like a movie split up into multiple episodes. And the show does also address a lot of social issues regarding women, which I think is a really good thing, and I appreciate the fact that they do that. I do have some kind of critiques of some of the way they go about it later on in the show, but I actually do appreciate the fact that they decide to address this stuff, kind of like how they've addressed these kinds of struggles in the Agent Carter show on ABC. I think it's good stuff to acknowledge, especially in this crazy world that She-Hulk lives in. So that's all the good stuff I really like about She-Hulk, and I do really enjoy the show. I do recommend checking it out, but unfortunately, I have quite a few flaws, so I'm going to go through those flaws, and just so you know, from here on out, we're going to talk spoilers, so you've been warned. My big overall issue with the show is that the show feels like it doesn't really know what it wants to be. There's a lot of really fun ideas. I like the fact that she's kind of a more funny character, kind of like Deadpool, and the fact that she's breaking the fourth wall, and I like that the show feels a lot more sitcom-ish than movie-like. And, there's a lot of good stuff going on, but I kind of feel like there's all sorts of, ideas kind of haphazardly slapped together and not really knowing what it wants to do. There's a complete lack of, a story structure, which is the big issue. There's some storylines that I think pay off really well, but there's also some storylines that kind of just feel like they're brought in to, maneuver other stuff, and there's other storylines that get brought in that I feel kind of become abandoned plot lines. So it does kind of get frustrating because it feels like this thing where it's we have a good idea, we just don't know what to do with it. And so I'm sold on the She-Hulk character. I'm just not entirely sold on the story they give in the show, because it doesn't really have enough of a cohesive structure, unfortunately. I think She-Hulk is also definitely an acquired taste. I mean, like I said, she's a fourth wall-breaking, funny character, kind of like Deadpool. And if Deadpool wasn't your thing, you're probably not going to like She-Hulk. Or if Deadpool was your thing, some of you may not like She-Hulk, because it's a different kind of character. And so I think that she's an acquired taste. I mean, I enjoyed She-Hulk, but she's not going to be for everyone. It's definitely an acquired taste for a lot of people. My other big flaw, and I've had this flaw with Miss Marvel too, I really liked Miss Marvel, and I liked the supporting characters in that show, but I felt like it didn't have that one supporting character that I felt kind of balanced it out, and it didn't have that one really amazing villain that I thought could have balanced it out. This show suffers from that too. I felt like the lack of a great supporting character kind of threw the show off. I mean, I did talk about how Nikki was like really close to that, but I kind of felt like she didn't really do enough to have that balance there. And like there's like several different villains in the show, but the one that kind of stuck out to me the most was Titania. And I thought Titania was just kind of a weak villain. I mean, she was kind of funny. They do some fun, interesting stuff with her, but again, it all kind of just felt like lack of a story structure. I felt like had they maybe had a villain that like really was like, okay, this is like what we're building up to. This is like the main villain of the series. The show would have been a lot better structurally, but Titania's kind of like, I don't know if she's the main villain, but she's one of the main villains, and they kind of just like did her jokey, which is fine, but I kind of just felt like the story structure wasn't there. I felt like we needed to have that better villain, we needed to have that better supporting character to balance everything out, and unfortunately, the lack of those two things makes the story structure feel very off. Some of the more risky humor isn't going to work for certain audiences. Now, I have a list of stuff I'm going to go through, and like this is where we're really getting into spoilers. I always kind of figured that Marvel was going to get into this kind of humor eventually, because we did kind of have some risky stuff in previous Marvel movies, like the sex scene in the first Iron Man movie, which was more playful and funny than anything else. And also the very awkward scene in Age of Ultron, which I despise, where Banner and Black Widow jump over the bar and his face lands in her chest. I hate that scene so much. And then there was also the really awkward, like, 10-second back scene in Eternals. So, and, we're also introducing R-rated stuff. Like, they're already tying in the Marvel Netflix stuff, which is an M-rated series, and they're tying in Deadpool within future projects. So I knew that we were going to get into some more risky stuff going forward into the MCU. And so this is like the kind of show where they're starting to maneuver down that direction, so it's not going to work for everyone. Some of the more risky humor is the stuff with Megan Thee Stallion. Now, I didn't have any issue with Megan Thee Stallion showing up in the show, but I'm wondering how this is going to feel in a few years. It almost kind of feels like this might be like a dated appearance. Like, it's funny for like modern audiences, but if Megan Thee Stallion isn't really all that talked about in a few years, people are going to be like, who is that? They're going to be like, why is this rapper from this time in this show? So, I mean, it is kind of funny, and I do kind of appreciate them wanting to like appease to a broader audience with like pop culture references in it, but I kind of felt like I'm not sure how it's going to age. There's also some sexual stuff in the show. Nothing like over the top in my opinion, but there's kind of the stuff where there's a whole like revenge sex tape plot point, which I know that for some people is going to ruffle some feathers, and there's kind of like, I don't feel like the sexual stuff in the show is overly explicit, but I know that if you have kids there, kids are going to be asking a lot of questions. So I feel like if you're a parent and you have kids who like some of the Marvel stuff, this show you might want to show them when they're just a little bit older, not because it's like over the top with its like innuendo or anything, but it is kind of there. Like, you do kind of like understand that there's characters who sleep with each other, and that there's like, more adult themes in this kind of show. So this is kind of one of the shows where it's kind of harder to appeal to a broader audience with that kind of stuff in it. Now, if you're an adult like me and you don't care about that stuff, it's probably not going to bother you all that much. But if you have kids, you might want to like wait till they're a little bit older. You might want to explain certain things to them. Now, I talked about earlier in the review how I appreciate that they address social issues, and I really do, but I also wrote down that addressing some of the social issues will ruffle some feathers. Now, I don't have anything against Marvel addressing social issues in shows or movies like other people do, which is weird to me. They do it really well in some of the other movies, which I think they do a really good job at. I feel like some people are gonna not like the social issues in this movie because they're gonna go... There's some people who are just gonna be like trolls, like, oh, they're trying to shove agendas down our throat, which is dumb. Or there's going to be people who are like, I kind of go to Marvel to like escape the world, so whenever I see these things being addressed, I appreciate that it's there, but maybe like I kind of just want to like not think about that stuff, which if you're one of those people, it's probably going to bother you a little bit. But kind of like with the addressing of social issues, so I appreciate how they talk about in the first episode where Jen talks about how she has to control her anger whenever she's dealing with catcallers in the streets, or whenever like people are mansplaining to her. I'm like, okay, those are like real things that women in real life do struggle with. So I appreciate that they talk about that stuff, and I actually thought that they explored that really well, where they actually do a good job of making it personal to the character, making you understand why someone like Jen would feel that way. And I feel for her when she talks about this stuff, and I think it's great. But where I kind of feel like the social issues got a little bit weird for me it wasn't the fact that they addressed it, but it's just like the way in which they executed it was weird. The whole thing about the intelligentsia plot line, where it's like it's very much inspired by like the incel community, which is like a real problem going on in the world, and I'm okay with a show like She-Hulk addressing issues with a community like that. But the way in which they go about it is kind of interesting, because I felt like they had the opportunity to like really go in depth on it and really kind of like make it really personal to the characters and make it to where they can like really explain why something like this is problematic, but they kind of like cut it short because of the fourth wall break that She-Hulk does. And so for me, I kind of felt like that thing where it felt like tacked on to kind of like troll a lot of people who were trolling the show, where they could have, in my opinion, used that to talk deeply about the issue. Because there's some people who are calling the show like all these crazy things because they want to push an agenda, or because they're trolling, right? Who like don't actually care about the show at all. They just want to have internet attention. There's some people who are hating on the show because they're genuinely bigoted. And so I felt like the show could have taken the opportunity to address that bigotry, and I would have really appreciated that, but I kind of felt like they decided, now we're instead going to use this plotline to troll the trolls instead of address the actual issue, which for me didn't really work. I appreciate that they could want to talk about stuff like this, and there's some lines in the show, this final episode, that I appreciate they talk about it, but I kind of felt like they could have done a better job of addressing it. I also wrote down that I don't appreciate that there's Sopranos spoilers. Now, here's the thing, I have not watched Sopranos yet, but it is a show I do want to watch. I'm going to watch it during the summer, undoubtedly. I can't wait to watch it, and thankfully I was able to avoid the spoilers because people online talked about the spoilers, and there are actually timestamps that I have listed in my phone that I will put on screen in case you want to avoid spoilers for The Sopranos. I know some of you are going to be asking, well, if you want to watch the show so much, why haven't you seen it already? Life gets busy. I'm going to watch it this summer, but yeah, I'm glad that timestamps and the internet exist that I can know to avoid it, but I kind of feel bad for people who maybe want to watch Sopranos who just haven't gotten to it yet, who then got it spoiled on the day the episode came out because they decided to do it. So I don't really appreciate that. I think that's kind of risky thing to do, and I feel like that is kind of sucky for a lot of audience members. And the show kind of just became less interesting as it went on, and so this is the thing where I talk about how I enjoy the character, and I really do, and I like the way that Jen evolves over the show, but a lot of the stuff outside of it, like I said, just feels like ideas that are good ideas, just they don't really know what to do with it. And so as the show went on, I kind of just got a little bit more frustrated, and it kind of like became less and less interesting. I still had fun the whole way through. I kind of just felt like had they maybe had a better story structure and had a real idea of what they wanted to do, they followed it through, the show wouldn't have felt like it just went down in quality as it went on. And I'm kind of sad to say this. I don't like the fact that I'm saying that this show, you know, the issues piled on. Like the first episode I was watching, I was like, okay, this is fun. That's how I felt about the first like 3-4 episodes. I was like, this is a fun show. I don't really see what people are complaining about. And then as it kind of went on, I was like, okay, now I'm starting to see why some people would have reasonable complaints about the show in regards to its story structure. Still a very fun show, but I just wish that it was a better story structure that didn't feel like it was declining in quality as it went on. Okay, this is like the big elephant in the room, and that's the bad CGI. Look, after the first few episodes, I got used to the CGI, but man, it felt so lazy that they just didn't give it better CGI. I understand why Hulk looks great, why Abomination for the most part looks great, and She-Hulk looks so rubbery. I mean, and I know that we ended up finding out that they got this project out way too early and that they were pushing the CGI people. They didn't give them enough time and they were getting underpaid, which sucks. I wish they'd been given more time to make it look better. And so I wish CGI was a lot better. However, I will say though, I am looking forward to seeing She-Hulk again if she even does come out again. I just hope they give her better CGI, and that they give the CGI people more money and more time to make it look better. So there is that. And my final flaw that I've written down is the overextending of the fourth wall breaks. I liked the fourth wall breaks for the vast majority of the show. It was in the last episode where we got this huge fourth wall break to where she decided to rewrite the show. I like the idea of her deciding to rewrite the ending because she talked about, well, this is my show, I want it to end this way, and talking about creative control and the whole thing about how even She-Hulk was starting to acknowledge that the story was getting a little out of hand. And so I appreciate that they decided to mock what made the show problematic in the final episode, but it also kind of just feels like they almost did weird stuff on purpose just to self-parody it. I'm not entirely sure that's the best plan. It's kind of like that meme, the bold strategy caught, and let's see if it pays off for him. You know, it is a fun show, and I appreciate the ideas, and there's a lot of stuff about the show that is very admirable and I do like, but I just wish that they had fleshed out the ideas more. I wish they had taken more time to finish the script, or to write more stuff about the script. I wish they had taken more time to figure out a cohesive structure, and I wish that they didn't have to borderline on self-parody, or basically just self-parody itself in order to make all the weird stuff not weird. I don't know, those are just things that frustrate me about the show. It might have sounded like I sounded more cynical than I meant to. I promise you, I liked the show. I don't hate the show at all. I really enjoyed it for the most part, but I think it could have been better. It's that thing where it's like, I'm not saying the writers didn't do a good job, or the people who made the show didn't do a good job. They just could have done a little bit better. That's kind of all I have to say about that. And before I go into my actual final rating and grade, a couple of spoiler stuff that I do really like, I want to talk about real quick, is the Daredevil stuff was a lot of fun. If you guys see my review for Spider-Man No Way Home, you guys know that I've only seen the first season of Daredevil. I have not seen the rest of the Defender saga. I will watch those maybe at the end of this year or the beginning of next year, because I will review those whenever Daredevil Born Again comes out. But from what I've seen of Daredevil, I really like the character in that show, and it's cool to see that they're really tying in like the Defender saga into the MCU more. And so it was really cool to see Daredevil again. It was cool to see Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock. I thought the Walk of Shame was really funny. I'm actually not upset about the fact that Daredevil and She-Hulk got together. I know some people were really upset about that. Maybe if you guys are a fan of the show and know more about the story than I do, which I know several of you probably do, then maybe I can see why you'd be upset by it. But for my limited knowledge, I'm like, it's alright. It's kind of funny. But I like the fact that they gave him a new suit that, like, it looks black in, like, the darkness, but actually has, like, yellow to it. I thought that looked cool. It was just a very cool, fun crossover that I appreciate. I like that they actually put the little Daredevil score in there. I was like, yes! It's like, we're really doing this. You actually heard the ding, 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 ding whenever the mask comes off. It's like, that's so cool. So I think the Daredevil stuff is a lot of fun. Okay, this one I actually do kind of have issue with, but we'll see what they do with it, is the whole thing about Hulk having a son. We see Hulk in the beginning of the show, and then we like almost never see him again until the end. Now all of a sudden he has a son. I was like, when did this happen? They never explain when this happened, so maybe they'll explain it in a movie in the future, I don't know, but it kind of makes me feel bad for people who maybe decide to give this show a miss, who might see the Hulk again in the Avengers or whatever movie comes out and go, when did Hulk have a son? And like they don't even explore it in the show either, why he has a son, so I don't know what that's all about. If they explain it in the future, cool. I don't have anything against the Hulk having a son, I just don't entirely understand what they were going for with that. So in the end, I do have some issues with She-Hulk. It could have been better in regards to several things. You know, I don't love the show, but I do like it, and I do think that I can appreciate a lot of stuff they went for, and I'm sold on the character. It's just that if we see the character again, I just want them to give this character more to do. I want them to give her a better story structure to follow through on, and I want them to give her better... Apologies, my camera ran out of footage for a second, so I was almost done with the review. I was just had to go and clear some footage to make room for this new footage. Yeah, I was basically saying, like, I'm all sold on the character. I like this character a lot. I think she's a lot of fun, and if they bring her back again, I'm looking forward to that, but I think they need to give her a better story structure, more to do. I think that they also need to give the CGI people more time and a better budget to make better looking She-Hulk. So that's kind of my opinions on that. So before I go into my rating and grade, I do really quick want to just give a summary about how I feel about the show. I have it written down very well on my phone that She-Hulk is flawed and could have been better, but I still had fun with it. It has some bumps in the road, but it was still a fun ride, and that's kind of how I feel about this show. The show has some issues. It's not a perfect show. I think it's definitely my least favorite of the Disney Plus shows. Definitely not as bad as people make it out to be, though. I still do recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it. For some of the people who might have given it a miss because they heard bad stuff about it, give it a shot. It's overhated. Like, I think everyone can find something to enjoy in it. It is probably an acquired taste for some people, but I do recommend checking it out because it is a fun show, and I think that if they're going to continue this character, it's probably good to get familiar with her now. So, you know, She-Hulk's not a perfect show. It could have been better in regards to several things, but I do have fun with it. I don't mind the show, and this is kind of one of those shows where I can kind of, like, if I want to, like, sit and really analyze a Marvel project, I probably won't put this one on because I feel like it might frustrate me a little bit, but if I want to just have fun with a Marvel project and kind of just want to shut my brain off and laugh and have a good time, I'll probably put the show on. I do think it is a fun show that's worth revisiting in that kind of aspect of it, and it is a fun show minus some of the more frustrating elements. So with that all being said, I'm going to give She-Hulk an overall rating of an 8 out of 10. It is a very entertaining and fun show, minus some of the more frustrating elements about it, and I'm going to give it an overall grade of a B. You know, this isn't the perfect show, it's got its flaws, but it also has a lot of really good stuff about it, and I think it is definitely worth checking out. I don't think it's worthy of all the hate that it gets. There's definitely some critiques to be said about it, but it's still a fun show, you know, and as I said, it has some bumps in the road, but it is still a fun ride. So that's my review for She-Hulk Attorney at Law. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. I do have one more review coming out next week for Werewolf by Night. I can't wait to talk about that. In just a few days, I'm going to go see Spider-Man Across Spider-Verse on opening night, which by the time this review gets out, I will have already seen it and done a review about that, so feel free to watch that if you have not. If you guys want to support the channel, feel free to check out some of my other reviews I've done for Marvel stuff. Also, if you want to support the channel, make sure that you hit the like button, and feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified about my latest videos. Also, go click the link in the description to go follow me on Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok, as I post a lot of content over there. So thank you guys so much as always for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, that's been it. Peace!